There are innumerable ways of approaching the subject of meditation. Nobody, not even a teacher of experience, can lay down the way that is ideal for you. The ray analysis should reveal, to a great extent, the kind of approach one should use in meditation. The second ray soul does well if his approach to meditation is based on duality. The understanding that a personality and the soul may exist independently and together at the same time, that they can remain as two distinct entities and yet be in a state of dynamic equilibrium. That is definitely a second-ray soul quality. Indeed, the second ray does not like to manifest as a complete and utter unity. It prefers to have an advanced station of itself materialized in form, whilst holding the base in the subjective world. And there are many qualities of meditation that we can seize upon and investigate and practice. One of the great qualities of meditation is its cyclic nature. Its cyclic nature. It is as cyclic as the seasons are. Season may be a little late one year or early the next year, but the season is inevitably expressed. And nature thrives on its seasons, and its wholeness is completed by the seasons. Life itself is cyclic. Many times I have drawn the sine wave of life in you and me and shown that the highest loops of the sine wave may be likened unto the spiritual phase of life, and the lower loops as related to the material phase of life. Life loves to oscillate between spiritual expression or subjective expression and objective expression, material expression and form. So we talk about resting in the heaven state, in the spiritual state, for cycles, and then coming down into a physical body for a manifestation in material form. And even this process is cyclic. The period in the heaven state may be very extended during that part of a cycle which has got its emphasis on the subjective. However, the period in the heaven world may be greatly diminished. There may be an emphasis upon life in the material form, so that life may be comfortably spread over 100 years in material form, even 150. Things are cyclic. The present indications are, with the population of the earth exploding still, that the period between lives at present about 350 years, will drop to about 200 or 150. That poses enormous problems, advantages, benefits for mankind in the future. Of course, the use of the sine wave to understand cycles is apropos to our age, whose symbol is Aquarius. We are under the cyclic influence constantly of Jupiter. And in the horoscope, Jupiterian aspects should help you to understand the cyclic possibilities in your own life. Look to your planet Jupiter, or whatever is the Lord of the 11th house. And cycles bring into manifestation many of the 11th house qualities, or Jupiterian qualities. The opportunity to materialize our dearest hopes and wishes. That's a Jupiterian feature, Aquarian feature. Materialize the dearest hopes and wishes. To work in groups. Praiseworthy to have good, right human relationships, but when it leads to group cooperation, the ability to work within a group, holding back your own individuality for the sake of the individuality of the group, inhibiting your own needs in order to further the needs of the group, all this is good for your own cyclic expression, especially good for meditation. So if you are poor in meditation, and most Westerners are, you should encourage the Aquarian features in your life. And this will tend to help you with your meditation. Man himself is a cyclic being. His physiology, the physiology of his physical body, is dictated by circadian rhythm, the rhythm imposed upon the body by night and day. We are susceptible to darkness. We are susceptible to daylight. And the gland that monitors this is the pineal gland, the focal point of attention for all meditation. The pineal gland is the endocrine structure that dictates to the body systems their rhythmicity. Whether the body system should be dampened down in the hours of darkness, or whether they should be opened up and excessively expressed in midday conditions, daylight. The pineal gland has this ability. Its effect is especially upon the sexual inclinations of the individual. Sexual maturation is under the hegemony of the pineal gland. There's no question about it. It's a physiological fact. The child matures under the direction of the pineal gland, comes on sexually under the dictates of the pineal gland. The pineal gland itself has its own rhythm set by night and day, and at spiritual levels, via the emerging thousand-petaled lotus, it also dictates to a great extent the rhythmicity required to sustain meditation. And so we are cyclic beings, and we live within a cyclic universe. And to work with the logos of the planet, you cooperate with his laws. It's one of the most fundamental basics of esoteric philosophy, to cooperate with the laws of nature, not to swim against the mainstream, but to wait for the tide to turn and then swim. So we cooperate with the laws of nature, and we fit into the rhythmicity of the planetary logos. We live by laws that are rhythmic. The great law of karma is rhythmic. And if we have an eye on our horoscope, we can observe the greater cycles of karma in the position of the planet Saturn, and the lesser cycles of karma, indicating karma of recent origin, in the situation of Mars in the horoscope. And there are periods in our life when karma is almost beyond reaching us. There is rhythmicity in everything that is natural. Karmic action can be virulent and harsh, demanding, inexorable. On other occasions, its effects are mild, non-demanding, benign. And to be able to work with the currents of karma in your own life is very helpful indeed. Our sleep and waking pattern is cyclic. And if we are careful, where possible, to maintain a rhythmicity here, which comes as close as possible to certain natural rhythms, this will help us with our meditation. There is no way out of it. If you choose naturally, or choose under the driving force of your desires to live late nights, put the esoteric away. Just say leave it for this life, another few lives. Don't try and work against the laws. If you have to stay up late, if you have work that is important, all right, so you have that feature in your life which you have to put up with. And if it is rightly motivated, that's enough explanation for it. But don't slip into the groove of believing that you're different. Oh, I can only work late at night. I think best when I work late at night. I could tell you a few stories about the late night operators who think that they can become great occultists and choose when and where they prefer to work late or early and go to bed early or late. The general advice is try and get early nights. Rise early. Rise early. Now, if your life circumstances make this impossible, and you want to be absolutely sure that they do before you blame them, then you must think in long terms of how to change your life's pattern or situation. But don't expect good results in meditation if your rhythmicity is all messed up. You're asking too much. We operate roundabouts in traffic under certain laws, and we all agree on those laws to abide by them. You break the law and you have an accident. The same is true with the functioning of great laws like karma, the laws of natural expression, what we call health. I can only give you my opinion and my experiences and the traditional teachings on the subject. Sleeping and waking. Very important, because the gateway to sleep is the most psychically sensitive time of the day. And the gateway from the sleeping state into the waking is also a gateway of great importance. When your psychic faculties, your spiritual faculties, if you wish, are naturally alert. And that is why people prefer to do meditation at these times. The Claregate method is done best of all at these times. Hypnagogia and hypnopompia, a psychological description for those two very sensitive periods of man's consciousness. Then there is another great spiritual law expressing itself as rhythmicity. And this is the law of alienation and inflation. There are times when we are close to our core, to our center, to our nucleus. And these we call the periods of inflation, or, if you like, the period of identification. And then there are periods when we are a long way from our center. And these are the periods of alienation. We are separated from our Lord, from the higher self. And we expect them. No one can live in constant identification or in a state of spiritual inflation. It's unhealthy, it's not true to life, it breaks nature's laws. The middle path, which makes allowances for both. Now there are many qualities of life which could be correlated to what I have just told you, the rhythmic nature of being. In ancient days, music was used where states of depression existed. But of course the quality of music has changed considerably since those days. We have explored more recently into a great number of fields of music. Plato, on the other hand, was very, very precise about the kind of music which was of value in promoting rhythmicity, the opportunity to link with the soul. Most of the music that we know today would have been ruled out. But music has been used for depression. The famous biblical example, of course, is of the depressed Saul, the king of the Israelites, who suffered severe bouts of depression, in which he became violent. And the only thing that could pull him out of his depressions was music. And it was then that David, the musician, was brought into his presence and could charm him out of the state of deep depression. It was out of this therapeutic understanding of music, which after all is only rhythm, rhythmicity, incorporated in sound, that there arose the first organized efforts at therapy, which was the singing of the Psalms. And the Psalms invariably have deep meaning, which assists the individual to adjust himself to the demands of both worlds. Not that we must live in this world less, but that we must learn to live in both worlds more. And Psalms have a very powerful effect on re-establishing identity with a higher self. Psalm 23 especially, but I'm sure you all have your own pet psalms. Now, just as music has certain areas in which it is most effective, and poetry could be applied in the same way, depending on the rays of the individual, we would say that meditation is ideal for certain life conditions, especially for alienation. Alienation. When you feel alienated by your life circumstances, when you've just had a bit too much of the objective world, objectiveness has just reached a stage where you say to yourself, I must get away from it all. I can't take any more, I must retire. And then meditation is ideal. It's as if you have reached the top of the crest of a wave and you are tottering there. You're between the pull of the moon and the pull of the earth, which have their own symbols. Then meditation can help you. Of course, meditation is ideal for stress. But I must qualify what I say. If you are in the midst of objective turmoil and you're struggling in the world, and everything's going wrong, and you are new to meditation, meditation can merely add at that stage to your difficulties. Oh, I've got to find half an hour for meditation. If I don't meditate now, never mind the customers, never mind this, I must do my meditation. And you're only aggravating your situation. But eventually, when meditation comes gently to you, and you are able to capture it easily, then it is ideal for stress. Then it is ideal because you can drive yourself to a certain state and say, well, I know that I can withdraw in half an hour's time. I can push myself an extra half an hour because in half an hour's time I can withdraw, I can have my meditation, and I know I will come out of it refreshed. Not only refreshed, but alert, which makes it so different from sleep and dreaming. So there are many ways of looking at meditation, and an understanding of its cyclic import is important. And therefore you should learn to organize your day. We call it order. Establish a higher order on your day. Accept that there are going to be periods which are hectic, periods in which you are surrounded with people who demand from you. But always know that you can choose a period of meditation and withdrawal, a period in which you can be silent and in which the tides of the soul may come in again and reclaim the land lost to them. We should always remember that our solar system, as well as our planetary system, is a great lotus of consciousness. Our own planet is but one of the many planets in the process of opening its petal in the consciousness of the solar logos. We should remember that the senses of this solar logos need to be awakened for his consciousness to grow and then to be controlled. Consciousness is not expanded all the time by alerting the senses. You could alert the senses so far, then you must control them before consciousness will grow any further. Just awakening the senses does not lead to continual expansion of consciousness. You expand them so far, and then they must be controlled. And we talk about the planetary scheme Earth, which seems to be awakening the sense of pain in the consciousness of the solar logos. Earth related to pain in his senses, somehow or the other, as we struggle through our lives, we provide him with the perception of pain. We ally that or correlate it to the earth, just as we correlate perhaps the sense of sound to the planet Mars. That music rests the sense of sound, of organizing that. It is under his control. If the music comes from the muse, it comes from the divine consciousness and is really part of his expression. There are those who can take the painful and elaborate it into the ecstatic. The highest form of this is the samadhic state. And then one wonders what the sense being unfolded by the Venus scheme is. If sight is the sensory perception allied to the petal of the Venus scheme. And it is here that the subject becomes relevant, because it is the sensation of sight that leads to inner experiences which we call meditation. The development of the organs of vision, and then the ability to see inwardly, to visualize, to experience the glimmerings of it in imagination, and then later to be able to control somewhat the inner vision in what we call visualization as part of the technique of meditation. Wherever we look, then, we see that meditation is related to cyclic activity. Meditation also endows us with increasing ability to differentiate truth from illusion, to be able to differentiate that which is the truthful, the beauteous, and the good from that which is involutionary, unworthy, transient. When people say, how can I be sure that this inner experience that I've had was not thought up by me? Well, it is through meditation that this ability to recognize the real from the unreal is strengthened. Keats, the poet, once said, what the imagination seizes as beauty must also be truth. What the imagination seizes as beauty must also be truth. One of the qualities which meditation brings out in us is to cause an overlapping of the senses, an overlapping of the senses. Senses begin to overlap. You are seeing and hearing sound. You are hearing color. You are picking up colors with your fingers, apprehending noises as images. We put this into a succinct expression, say the body becomes an eye. The body becomes an eye. The whole body is a receptive organ. The body becomes an eye. Now there's no doubt about it that meditation is more likely to succeed when the soul has lived many lives on the earth. But not only that, that on its own does not qualify it. But when the soul has lived many lives on the earth and has matured, then meditation is much easier to achieve in the personality endeavor. There's no disgrace in being a young soul, far from it. It merely means that you are in a greater state of acceleration than an old soul. You may be a young soul, but your spiritual acceleration is much, much faster than if you are an old soul. Now, the advantage of having a mature higher self is that the mature higher self actively participates, is capable of actively participating in your development. It is capable of constructing the antakarana for you, and indeed proceeds to do so if the personality vehicle is worthy of it. No higher self, mature or immature, young or old in numbers of lives, is going to plan for and establish or assist in the establishment of the antakarana with its personality, the bridgehead with its personality, if the personality is unworthy, if the personality is giving itself to self-aggrandizement, is creating encapsulation, material encapsulation about itself, living for the leaf instead of for the tree. But if the personality shows by repeated cyclic activity that its motivation is towards the truthful, the beautiful, and the good, then the higher self will take steps to create the fabric of the antakarana, the channel between itself and its personality. Many sounds are created by the higher self. We tend, however, because the higher self is a deva, we tend to apprehend these sounds as images, always remembering that what we see the devas hear, and what we hear the devas see. The higher self helps to construct the fabric. We have to enter onto it the design. If you like, we can see this mirrored in what we call the mandala. The mandala, bearing in mind some of the structures that I have drawn here, the mandala is a halfway house between the personality and the soul. And it is as if the fabric of the mandala is created or contributed by the soul, but because the personality is very varied from life to life, it must be the personality that projects the design onto the mandala. And the design is related to the externa, the experiences which the personality is going through in his outward life. And the mandala is a halfway house. It is a pattern. And its pattern is acceptable both to the personality and to the soul. And anything that is woven onto the mandala can form a communication between the personality and the soul. Of course, in our method at Claregate College, our mandala is a wheel with 12 spokes, which has as its basic design the zodiac, and its externa are 100,000 or more images which are woven into our inner wheel or mandala. The overall intention of the soul, of the higher self, is to bring the personality to a state of wholeness. The overall intention of the higher self is to bring its personality into a state of wholeness, into a state of being rounded out, so that there are no ugly ripples in the personality, so that there are no cracks, indentations, that the personality needs to be whole in order for the qualities of the soul to be reflected through it. And it will do many things, take many steps to ensure that that integration of personality is achieved once it recognizes that the intent of its personality is not towards self-aggrandizement, but towards the aggrandizement of the whole of humanity. Let us take by analogy what this means in terms of a growing plant. The plant, of course, is susceptible to the light emitted by a great symbol of wholeness, which we call the sun. The great symbol of wholeness, the greatest that the ancients could certainly conceive of, is the sun. And the sun sends its light, which seeks expression in the mirror of material things, form. And one of the parts of this mirror is, of course, the plant. And under the impact of not just the light of the sun, which will enable it to photosynthesize energy in its leaves, but the spiritual light of wholeness makes it attempt to reflect in itself the wholeness which we call the flower. Makes it attempt to reflect within itself the wholeness that it has been permeated with, steeped in, to reflect this in its own nature, to produce the flower, the glory, the spectacle, the mirror of the higher self. And of course, the plant kingdom does this beautifully. In its own level of attainment, it is nearer to perfection than any of the kingdoms, and we can see the struggle for wholeness succeed again and again in the plant kingdom. Now, whether we're looking at a flower or a mandala, all are suggestive of wholeness. Flowers have therapeutic value, but especially spiritual wholeness. This is why they have always been the gifts to the guru, to the spiritual teacher, returning like to like. The symbol of wholeness returned to the one who is whole. Our own symbol of Claregate is that of a mandala of wholeness, which we display, letterheads, festivals, book covers, show this mandala of wholeness. And so meditation is a human technique for establishing powerfully the relationship of a whole entity, the higher self, with an entity trying to become whole. And that's meditation. It is the science of taking spiritual energies offered by the higher self and creating a wholeness in the personality, which then in some extraordinary way is able to radiate what is being poured into it from the higher self, to radiate that to all of humanity, thus raising the level of wholeness in humanity itself. People are far too rigid in their approach to meditation. We have seen how extraordinarily wide it is in its scope. People in the past, because of their rays, because of the influence of religions and philosophies and doctrines, have set out to destroy evil. And thus they have created wars, have expressed cruelty and viciousness. What is far better in your own life, rather than to adopt a crusade against evil, is to posit the good. Never mind about the evil. Rather posit the good. Try and create new nuclei of goodness around you. Things that will grow. You'll energize them first, but ventures, propositions, designs, pictures, poetry, art, all the things that man is capable of being creative in, even a child. Create a nucleus that will act for the good. And when you do this around you, when you allow these nuclei to disseminate their goodness, the evil is destroyed. Yes, you can be specifically a destroyer, not bothering to be creative in the process, but those individuals are very rare indeed. Individuals with powerful first-rate qualities, a Helena Blavatsky or an Adolf Hitler, who have the power of Shambhala being thrust through them to destroy, and to destroy perfectly. So going a little further from that, just for example, we're not asked to destroy the body because it is disobedient. You'll be surprised the number of people who come to this idea that because they're thinking poorly, that they are thinking evil thoughts, that they must destroy the body that is doing the thinking. It's much better to increase your consciousness to include the good, to be aware of things that are good all around you, and then evil thoughts will die out by attrition. Rather than spending your energies fighting evil thoughts, rather bring in good thoughts. Identify yourself with goodness around you, and the evil will strangle